Welcome to Carting Truth Podcast, a father-daughter duo focusing on sharing revelations through conversations with the Lord. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome to Carting Truth Podcast. I'm Lindsay. I'm here with my dad, Shane, and today's episode is going to be super interesting. It is regarding strong delusion and also known as the Great Deception. Now, this is going to get a little bit weird at times, and if it wasn't biblical, we wouldn't be talking about it. But it's super interesting, and it's something that is going to happen during the end times that we think that you should know about. So I'm going to leave it to my dad to get started about what all of this means.
Now, Lindsay, we're fixing to go off the deep end.
In the best way.
We're going to be called false prophet for sure on this one.
Oh.
But we do have to get into this. I have a story I need to tell.
I can't wait.
This is what started me down this pathway. So I was a runner back in 2008. And I took out of my house and took off running down the road, and I ran 3 days a week, and this was on a Tuesday. And of course, I didn't take my camera, of course.
I think it was supposed to be that way.
Yeah. So I ran down the street, which leads me to another street. And as I hit that street, I was going up this rise to a 4-lane. And I would make this loop on the 4-lane. So as I'm running up the rise, I'm looking up in the air, and I see this object. Now, it's not far away. It's just several hundred feet off the ground. And I'm running up there and I'm looking at it, and I thought, what in the world? Somebody has brought a blimp into our area. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was a blimp. It looked to be about 30 to 40 feet long. But as I ran and got closer and closer to it, it wasn't moving, and the wind was blowing pretty good that day. And I was looking at it, and I thought, well, it doesn't have anything on it advertising. Usually the Goodyear blimp used to come around from time to time in our area, and you could see it when I was a boy. But this didn't have any advertising on it, and it looked almost like it was a poured future object.
Like liquid.
Liquid. Like the Terminator.
This story never gets old.
But it wasn't really, really chrome looking. It was more of a pewterish gray color.
Okay.
Well, I'm running around looking at it, and I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. So I run up there to the road, and it's just right there underneath. I'm right there underneath it. And I'm looking up at it, and I'm like, wow, that don't have any joints in it. There's no place that it was put together. And I thought, there's no rivets. And I thought, wait a minute, there is no control box. If this is a blimp, somebody couldn't ride in this thing because it didn't have any place for them to ride. And it had a fin on each end, and it was shaped like a blimp, but rounded on both ends instead of rounded on one end. All right. And it had fins on both ends, and I'm looking at it, and it's just sitting there, and it's not making any noise at all. None. And it's not moving. And the wind's kind of tussling that day. It was in April of 2008 when I seen this, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I thought, wow, that looks like that was poured. That looks like they formed that all as one piece. And I thought, somebody has to be flying that thing with a drone. So I'm looking around for the guy. And what was sad about it is there was no place for anybody to be. I mean, I could see for miles in every direction, and there was no place.
Like no strings.
Yeah, nobody's out there with their little thing. No strings, no anything. It's just sitting there completely motionless and completely soundless. And I'm looking at it, and I thought, what in the world is that? And of course, I didn't have my camera. I didn't have my phone with me. Later on, I started carrying my phone every time. Because if I seen this thing again, I was going to get a picture of it.
Right, okay.
So I sat there and looked at it. I mean, it was a good 5 to 10 minutes standing there staring at it, just perplexed that it wasn't moving. Well, it wasn't moving. The wind was blowing, and it wasn't moving. And it wasn't making any noise. And I thought, that is bizarre. So I turned, started running. I ran about 20 or 30 yards, and it just got me again. And I said, what is that? Turned around, and it's not there. I can see miles in every direction, and it's not there. And I said to myself, I thought, that thing had to dematerialize, or it was very fast. And I'm talking, no way it could be that fast. Well, I won't say no way, but it would not humanly
Right,
possible.
right.
And I sat there and I thought, I seen that. Man, I wish that I got a picture of that because it was there. Now it was so close that I could have shot a bow at it. This was April 2008. Well, I finished my run, and later on, I found some passages in the scripture that started making some sense. I think what I saw was a chariot from another dimension. What I think I saw. I've come to that conclusion. So you remember when Elisha was there and he said, "Open the eyes of my servant."
Yes.
All right, his little helper guy, whatever you call that guy.
Yes.
So he opened his eyes, and there was chariots of fire, and they were there the
Spiritual
whole
realm.
time. Yeah,
Yes.
they were the whole time they were there, and he was in the spiritual realm, and he opened his eyes, and he could see them. Right, I think my eyes got opened. That's what I think happened. And I seen that. And I think the reason I seen it is for this podcast today, because after that, some things started being downloaded into me about this. And I'm real serious about this. I know this may make people think I'm lost my mark.
Well, I was in college when he told me this, and I thought, oh, since I have left, my dad has went off the deep end. He's seeing UFOs because you're like, I think I saw a UFO, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to move back home. But I mean, it wasn't the first time that you've seen into the spiritual realm. It wasn't the first time your spiritual eyes have been opened.
No.
Weird stuff has happened to you
Yeah.
for a long time, and I wasn't on the spiritual level that I am now to be like, yeah, like the Lord is showing you something. That's probably why you didn't get a picture because
I may not have been able to get a picture.
right, exactly. And the fact that you're supposed to share without, you know what I mean? The hard proof of what you
Yes.
saw.
In the middle of the tribulation, there is a great deception coming, a strong delusion that it says that God will bring upon the earth.
Yes.
That strong delusion and that great deception is what Hollywood and all these other people have been trying to get us ready for. All these stories, there's going to be a disclosure, and that disclosure is going to be aliens that say that they deposited us here to try to defeat the gospel.
Yeah.
And at that time, God's going to allow it to happen. He's going to allow us, He's going to allow the world to be deceived by this. So we're going to look at a passage, but before we look at this passage, I, we always have to have two witnesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to throw out one of the witnesses in Job.
Okay.
And we'll read that part in Job and we'll think about what's happening there, and then we will proceed. All right.
Okay. We're reading from Job 2, verse 3. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil, and he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause.
Okay, the reason I'm bringing this passage up, we have to understand something. In that whole story of Job, Satan actually did the destroying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But God took credit for it,
Ooh, explain that.
responsibility for it. Well, God knows He's God, and nothing can happen without His permission. And for the purpose that we would have Job, the book, recorded, and for the purpose of letting us understand that just because you suffer doesn't mean it's because of unrighteousness. All right. Thus, Jesus, he suffered for us being righteous.
Yeah.
Job suffered being righteous. Joseph suffered being righteous. All right.
That's a tough one in today's world.
It is tough. But what happens is it God allows it doesn't mean He causes it.
Oh, absolutely.
But He does take responsibility for allowing it to happen, which is what He just did in this passage. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see this kind of happen again in the passage we're fixing to read about this great delusion. All right.
Oh.
So I wanted that to be set in your mind that God doesn't cause bad,
Right. There's no
but
evil, there's no
but He will allow it for His purposes, because what we just read in Job,
Mhm.
right? Also, Joseph said, "You did it for evil, but God meant it for good."
Right, right.
So He takes the evil and makes it for good. In this situation, God is allowing a delusion to come for His purposes. All right.
Right.
Not necessarily for the good of the people it's coming for, but for the overall purpose,
Mm-hmm.
it's good. When God tells us to pray, Jesus told us to pray, lead us not into temptation.
Right.
The thing about it is God will give you what you want. And if you want evil, you'll get it.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Well, he gives us a
That's
choice.
well,
He,
that's why he's telling us not to pray, not to be led into temptation. Because if we ask for things, sometimes he says no, but sometimes he doesn't.
mhm.
So it's real important that we understand that because this is what's fixing to happen to the whole world. All right. So let's go to that passage, and you'll see that in the passage, and we'll also see what he's talking about. This strong delusion. All right.
Okay, we're in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 9 through 12. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness.
Okay, this passage is telling us, and we kind of went over that when we was talking about Judas being Antichrist. And I really believe that CERN has something to do with this. All right.
Ooh.
I think you're going to open up a portal that's going to cause the Antichrist to come up out of the bottomless pit. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm not saying that the Lord told me this, all right? But I am saying I've got this feeling that's what's going to happen.
CERN is a very strange, all around eerie. I get eerie feeling about CERN.
Yeah.
If you haven't looked at it, YouTube has some really good like videos and stuff.
So this coming of the Antichrist says that it's after the power of Satan, right? Because how does Satan get his power? He manipulates men.
Right, right,
So this Judas Iscariot, as we've taught before, will come out of the bottomless pit and he will become the Mahdi, right?
right.
Out of the well in Iran. And I would just also like to say last episode, I was talking, you asked me a question about why would the Antichrist or why would Satan want to stop the sacrifice? The other one is to show the Muslim people that they've triumphed over Israel. That was part of that too. All right.
Okay.
So this being's coming out, and God says He's going to send strong delusion that they would believe a lie, that they all might be damned. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means in the middle of the tribulation, of the middle of the week, which starts the tribulation.
Mm-hmm.
After the witnesses have done their preaching, which we're going to put this all together in one big episode, all right?
Right, right.
After the two witnesses stop their preaching and they get killed and then are raised in the dead, then the Antichrist will go into the uh, temple, which has to be there,
Right.
and proclaim himself as being God. All right.
Okay.
And then God, because people have not received the gospel as of yet,
Mm-hmm.
that door shuts.
Nobody else can be saved.
Yeah, because what Jesus said in Matthew 24 is that when this gospel is published in the whole world, then the end will come. All right.
Okay.
The end is the last 42 months.
Okay.
All right. So that door's going to shut. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what will be the catalyst that will cause this people to not be able to be saved anymore? Well, one thing is this strong delusion. All right.
Right.
Part of that delusion, I believe,
Uh-huh.
is that aliens will appear and be disclosed. And they will say, we put you here, just like the History Channel's been preaching for years.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
We put you here and we're the reason here. And how are we going to argue with that? It is going to be such a deception
Mm.
that it will deceive the world. Everybody that's left that would not receive the love of the truth, God is going to cause them to believe the lie that this guy is God and that through the manifestation of all these beings from different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
that this strong delusion will just completely cover the earth.
Wow. It's like you said about like Hollywood desensitizing us to aliens, all the movies, stuff like that. I mean, you can't even get on YouTube anymore without seeing somebody saying that they saw an alien or they were visited by an alien.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what are they crazy? Or is this like a demonic thing? Or like,
Well, if you remember when we talked about it, the world's going to be getting so dark spiritually and then physically following it
mm-hmm.
that the breach between the worlds, will take place at that time. There's no reason anymore to hold anything back. You can't get saved, so there's no more reason for faith, right?
Right.
So this stuff's just going to start coming to oozing out of the cracks everywhere. And that's why we see in Revelation, even the bottomless pit opened, with
Right.
the fifth trumpet. So that breach between the worlds is going to happen. And part of that breach is these disclosure of these aliens. And they're going to say that they're what put us here. And it'll be, of course, you won't have the Holy Spirit convicting anybody because strong delusion's coming.
Right.
It'll be impossible to overcome it. Now,
Wow.
if you're already saved, you won't.
You're good.
Yeah,
You're
you
good to
become
go.
lost.
Praise Jesus.
You won't become lost,
Right.
but the rest of the world, the gospel is done. And so it's basically God saying, you don't want me, and you want this stuff. We'll just let it creep in. That's what's going on, and it will come in as aliens from other planets. Now, you say, how do you know that? Well, we're fixing to find out. We're fixing to show you
Getting
some
weird.
verses. Well, it happened once already. I think about Genesis 6. Said the sons of God descended, took up wives, have children, right?
That's true. The Philian. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we get all the demigods. That's where we get all the Greek gods. That's where we get all the Roman gods. That's where we get Zeus. That's where we get, all this stuff,
Oh.
Baal, Dagon, Diana, all that stuff, it's
Okay.
coming from, all that's coming from that, right? So it was sown in the world. Well, there's a passage in Daniel that says this is going to happen again, but it's not going to happen the same way. They came down and married, right?
Right.
The next time they come down, it says they don't cleave. So let's go read that passage and look at it and consider what Daniel was actually saying to us in chapter 2.
I can't believe the Bible says stuff like this.
Well, it's there.
It's
Not
there,
making it up.
but it would like confuse some people at first, but then you start delving in the weird stuff, and it's like, oh wait, this is
Well,
biblical.
Isaiah says that it's line upon line, precept upon precept. There's a little here and a little there. So we had some people in comments, oh, you're just grabbing pieces of, well, yeah, that's what you do. That's what God tells us to do. We have to go grab the pieces and put the puzzle together.
But he has to show you the pieces.
He has to show you the pieces.
Because
and it has,
human mind could never wrap around that.
Right.
So thank God that he showed you the pieces and you're able to share.
Well, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
I'm sorry, I'm addicted to this stuff. I love the scripture. It's
Well, to know
much in
truth is addicting.
It's
Truth is addicting.
So much in it, so much in the scripture that we just take for granted when we read these weird little bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go get the pieces like Isaiah is telling us to, it starts forming a picture. So let's go over to Daniel chapter 2.
Okay.
And see what Daniel warns us is coming. All right.
All right. Okay, we're going to Daniel chapter 2, verses 42 through 44. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to the other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
So Daniel starts telling us, he starts interpreting the king's dream. All right. And in the interpretation, as he gets down to the last kingdom, and there was 4 of them, one was gold, one was silver, one was brass, and one was iron, and one was iron mixed with clay. So the 5th kingdom is actually the 4th kingdom revisited, and it has something added to it. We're not getting into the interpretation of what all these items are yet. We'll do that sometime, but not right now. What we are getting to is the fact that he said, and let's go back to that passage and we'll see where he said that. Look at verse 43 and it says, whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. So the they are not the seed of men. So who are they then?
That's a tongue twister.
Who are these people? All right, and they're mixed. So the last kingdom has 10 kings and they mix. But there's a mixing of people who are not the seed of men.
Okay.
So the clay would be the seed of man. We're made out of clay.
Right.
So in antiquity, iron was Rome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that these alien beings will come through the iron, which is Rome, which is modern day Roman Catholic. All right. So does the Roman Catholic look for aliens? Well, they do. On Mount Graham, they have got a telescope.
What?
And they're looking for aliens. And they're looking for, and they actually made different comments about if aliens come, they would baptize them and all these different eerie things. All right. This is not a bashing of Roman Catholics.
I was going to say, we have lots of Catholic friends. We're not Catholic,
Yeah.
but we don't have anything against the
We're not
Catholics.
going to bash them, but the hierarchy of the Catholic Church is delving into this. They have got an observatory on Mount Graham, and they actually had a lawsuit over it. But anyway, they're looking for these beings, and I think that these beings will come through them somehow. All right. So yeah, that's what I feel like God has showed me that's going to happen. These beings will come. Now, we need to go back and look at another part of the passage and talk about it's a different strategy than Genesis 6. All right. Let's go back over to the Bible. Yeah, so look, it says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with mire clay, they shall mix themselves with the seed of man. Then it says this, they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So what's that saying? That means the strategies has changed.
Okay.
The original strategy of the fallen angels was to corrupt man's DNA.
Right.
So they came down
Mm-hmm.
and they married wives.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we get demons from, the
Mm-hmm.
departed souls of the Nephilim,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that was their strategy. This time their strategy has changed.
Okay.
Basically, two reasons. One reason is the first time it didn't work. All right.
Well, the flood knocked them all out.
Right. First time it didn't work. And it brought judgment upon those angels, right?
Right.
So what angel's going to try that again?
Yeah.
They seen what happened to the other angels, right?
Right.
The second part is this. They don't have time. So their strategy now is to come down and to convince men to try to gain more power via man to fight God when he comes. All right.
Okay.
So to deceive men is their strategy this time.
So they're the great deception.
It's the great deception.
And they're the ones.
Yes, they are. And it's going to take the whole world. All right. And this is going to start in the middle of the week, which is the tribulation period. The Antichrist gets power for 42 months.
Right.
And once he gets power, now see what's happening this. And when you read Daniel, you get, wait a minute, there's certain things in there. Well, you got to understand this about Daniel. Once the gospel leaves the Gentiles, which is what the two witnesses are winding up, all right, it turns and it goes to the nation of Israel back. Mm-hmm. See, it left Israel to go through Jerusalem, Samaria, to the other ends of the world. Okay. Well, it's made its loop back. It finishes up in Jerusalem from which it started, right? Then, according to Zechariah, it turns and goes and is poured out upon Israel. All right. And the reason is now it's their time as a nation to be saved. Now, there's always been a remnant of them saved, according to Romans. Mm-hmm. God was saving them all along because he has to keep the root going. A lot of people want to make the Gentile part of the church the root. It's not. We're grafted into them. Right. So, but at this time, it turns in that veil taken off of their eyes and they're being saved. All right. So we're going to be somewhat of a help to Israel for that conversion period. Right. But Gentiles will not be able to go in. So God's going to send strong delusion to the Gentiles because they didn't receive the gospel while they had the opportunity. And but he is going to enlighten Israel at the same time. All right. So, yeah. So, the 144,000 is going to be preaching the gospel, during that time. No, they're not. Here's why. The gospel is the good news of the resurrection, right?
Okay.
The 144,000 don't die, so they're never resurrected.
Right.
Why would God call somebody to preach the gospel of the resurrection that's never going to be resurrected?
That's a good point. And the fact that nobody can be saved at this point.
Nobody can be saved at this point. There's no reason. Right.
We've hit the point of
Right. And he also said this. He told them back in the Gospels, Jesus said, I'm going to take from you, Israel, and give it to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. They do not get to become the reapers. That's our job. Well, that reaping is over with. It's done.
Right.
We've been taught wrong all these years, and now it's so ingrained in people, and they make comments to us, oh, you're false prophet. No, we're not false prophet. We're correcting what the false teaching is. We're correcting it. That's why we've been sent, to correct some false teaching. All right. And so this is what's going on here. There will be a great deception. It will happen in the middle, and it will deceive the whole world.
Wow.
And it's very, very sad, but it's very, very there. And that's what Brother Daniel was telling us about. He said they're going to come and they're going to mix. And they're not going to cleave like they did the first time.
Right.
It's a different purpose this time. And that makes a lot of sense of all these different abductions and all this stuff. They're preparing for that.
So I feel like I am left with some questions.
Okay.
I know you have talked about this before, and you have told me the story before of when you saw the figure, the blimp, whatever you want to call it. And I also, it takes me back to like Area 51, where there is a lot of, I know if you're like me, you're probably thinking, oh, what about, is that true? Is that a big like rumor or a hoax or what? But I mean, it kind of makes sense on the things that are floating around about Area 51, the old man's testimony.
Yeah.
Like, does that fit into this whole?
I think it's all part of, the recent disclosures that came out with the whistleblowers testifying in Congress. It's going to eventually be disclosed. I mean, it's already started. But what's the biblical answer for that? That's what I'm trying to give you. It's in the Bible. I know that's what Daniel's telling us. Daniel's warning us. And that's why we're dealing with this stuff, while we're dealing with the whistleblower, while we're dealing with Roswell, New Mexico, while we're dealing with Area 51. Why is all these strange things happening and lights and they get video of these tic-tac UFOs that take off like crazy?
Another thing I was thinking about, there are some legit things out there, like videos.
Yeah.
Wasn't there one like on the Temple Mount?
Yeah.
Near the Temple Mount?
Yeah. There was all kinds.
All these things, while you're talking about this, all the things that I thought, oh wow, okay, that's weird. I don't know. Like, is this biblical? Do I believe this? Is this demonic? Is this just like people are crazy or editing videos? Like, all that is going through my mind when you drop this bomb.
It is definitely demonic. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely demonic. It's part of that great deception, that strong delusion that God's going to send. It's going to allow it to happen. And, it's not what he wants to happen, but because we've taken the path we've taken, it's going to hit this world. We just got to realize that biblically it does tell about it and it does talk about it. And we just can't shun that away and go back into our
Bible has answers for everything, even aliens. What in the world? Like, it doesn't leave anything left unturned. There's literally an answer for everything. And who thought aliens?
We need to be ready for that. We need to understand that this is going to happen. And when it does happen, by that time, it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to convince your loved ones not to believe it. We've got to convince them now. That's why it's got to be brought up before it happens.
Right.
Hey, there's going to be a class of people, of beings that show up in our world that's here to deceive us. And we need to be telling our loved ones that they need to get born again and pray for them to be born again before these guys show up, because once they show up, it's going to be it'll be virtually impossible to defeat it. They're going to say right there, they are. You said God made us, and they're saying they made us. We don't see God, we see them. That's going to be the dilemma that's coming. And it's so I mean, I read that they shall mix themselves with the seed of men. Well, who in the world's the they? Well, the they is a reoccurrence of the fallen ones showing up again. And they've already done it once. Now, they won't do it, they won't come about it the same way. They'll, we're a whole lot smarter than them old heathens back in there, where you just appear in your glory and, tell them that you're Zeus. that's not going to work today.
Right,
So they'll
right.
go about it. They'll go about it in a different way. But yeah, it's there and it's serious. And had I not seen that, you kind of toy with that, and it makes you uncomfortable to deal with that.
Absolutely.
But we're going to have to deal with it because we're going to face it.
Weird stuff is coming.
Yeah. So that's why we're telling you. We're telling
Just to bring awareness
Yeah.
to, I mean, I was worried, nervous to do this episode
Right.
after we kind of skimmed and talked about what we are going to talk about. I'm like, this is just really weird. This is going to like make people uncomfortable, maybe. Like, but it's just to bring awareness of the times that are coming. We want to thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Wait a second. We didn't do a second witness to this claim.
Well, that's true. We didn't. And we need to always do that because the second witness is
It's key.
paramount. I mean, God tells us we got to have two witnesses. Okay, let's go to another passage where
Do it.
Paul is warning us of this. All right.
All right. Okay, we're going to Galatians 1, verse 8. But though we or any other angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you, that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed.
Yeah. So
There it is.
there it is. The word angel means a messenger. And he said from heaven. Now, there's three heavens. All right.
Right.
And the holy angels are in the third heaven, and the unholy angels are in the second heaven. And that's where I'm proposing these aliens are going to come from, is the second heaven. So Paul is saying that if a messenger that comes from heaven tells you anything other than the gospel that he preached, any other good news, hey, good news, we're the one that brought you here. Let him be accursed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why make that comment? Why would, because God knows this is going to happen.
Mhm.
And the Holy Spirit prompted Paul to pen these words for us. There are going to be other messengers that come
Mhm.
and present to us a different gospel,
Of
a
course.
different good news. Good news. We brought you from another world and planted you here, and we've come back because you've evolved to a certain point. Paul's warning us. He says, if that happens, let them be accursed. Why? Because they are cursed.
I feel like this is going to be a really confusing time in our world. It's already getting weird. I feel like our world's already getting weird, but confusion is obviously the author of confusion is. It's not his first rodeo.
It's imperative that we know these people because, I mean, when this shows up, what are the Christians going to say? Paul said, hey, there is no other gospel. There is no other good news but that of Jesus Christ.
If you are enjoying the content and would like to support our ministry, you can do so through Venmo or PayPal. Our handle is @CardingTruth or use our QR code. We want to thank you for hanging out with us today, where we covered where great deception leads to strong delusion for the end times. These are all small pieces of the puzzle that we're going to put together about the time of Jacob's trouble. We also hope that you're enjoying our content. We would love for you to like, subscribe, and click that bell to get notifications on new videos. And we hope that you join us again next time, and be blessed.